Are you working late once more? Greg called from the kitchen, his tone laced with insincere concern. I looked away from my laptop, concealing the frustration that was beginning to surface. Are there significant deadlines this week? I stated in a casual manner. He smiled subtly as he poured himself a glass of wine. Please be sure to take care of yourself, Holly. Life encompasses more than just professional obligations, as you may be aware. If you were aware, my name is Holly, and for the past 6 months, I have been leading a dual existence. Not the glamorous or thrilling variety. No, my dual existence involved feigning normalcy while discreetly gathering evidence of my husband's infidelity. It commenced with minor details. Meetings held late at night that lacked clarity. Charges on our credit card for high-end dining establishments I did not attend. And a subtle scent of an unfamiliar perfume on his attire. Initially, I dismissed it as a figment of my imagination, however. One day, while sorting through the mail, I discovered a receipt for a down payment on a vehicle. It was an upscale automobile. I wasn't the intended recipient of this. I initially approached him in a gentle manner, inquiring about the unusual expenses. Greg, known for his eloquence, dismissed it casually. Employee benefits? He stated with a smile. My clients have a preference for celebrating in a particular manner. I wished to trust him, however. His avoidance of eye contact suggested that the reality was considerably less innocent. I began to focus my attention. In a short period of time, the full picture became clear. Greg was not only engaging in infidelity, but he was also utilizing our joint savings to support a lifestyle for Melanie, whom he referred to as his client. He indulged in lavish dinners, went on extravagant shopping excursions, and most importantly, planned to gift her an automobile for their anniversary. The boldness of the situation was truly remarkable. I dedicated long hours to ensure our future stability, while he depleted our finances in an attempt to impress a woman who likely lacks a fundamental understanding of commitment. However, rather than addressing the issue directly, I chose to remain silent. That evening, as Greg took a seat on the couch, I opened my laptop and commenced my planning. I conducted research on fraud reporting procedures, explored legal options, and investigated repossession companies. Each keystroke was driven by a level of determination I had not experienced in years. Greg believed he was astute, however. He failed to recognize that he had underestimated my capabilities. If he intended to engage in underhanded tactics, I was prepared to take decisive action. During the subsequent weeks, I fulfilled my responsibilities with precision. I found humor in Greg's jokes, inquired about his business trips, and chose to overlook the fact that he returned home with the scent of an expensive cologne that I did not purchase for him. However, I was diligently preparing my case in the background. The initial step involved submitting a fraud report. We used our joint financial resources to purchase the vehicle, but the dealership documentation only included Greg's name, which I took advantage of. I reached out to the dealership to request additional information regarding the transaction. Upon concluding the call, I had acquired all the necessary information. Documentation including dates, amounts, and evidence indicating that the purchase was made without my consent. I subsequently made a call to the bank. I suspect that my account may have been compromised, and I have informed the fraud department accordingly. I have identified a transaction that I did not authorize, and it involves a substantial amount. We have flagged the account and initiated an investigation. With each step I took, I further constrained the parameters of Greg's scheme. In the meantime, I monitored his activities closely. Each time he smirked at his phone or spoke into it discreetly, reminiscent of a teenager making a clandestine call, I made mental observations. I was able to observe a message from Melanie. I look forward to experiencing the surprise you have promised. The unexpected development? Undoubtedly, the vehicle was the unexpected development. The thought was unsettling, however. It also strengthened my determination. Greg believed he was the master of manipulation, however. He overlooked one essential factor. I understood the importance of patience. The arrangements for the anniversary were executed with remarkable precision. Greg proposed an upscale dinner at one of the restaurants he frequently visited with Melanie. He expressed his desire to treat me well. accompanied by a grin that had previously captivated me but now elicited a sense of discomfort. "That sounds delightful," I responded, concealing my disdain with a pleasant smile. I was aware of his intentions, utilizing the dinner as a guise to present Melanie with the car afterward. However, I was determined not to allow him to succeed in this endeavor. That evening, following Greg's departure for another client meeting, I concluded the arrangements with the fraud investigator. The acquisition of the vehicle has been flagged, and the repossession team has been scheduled accordingly. All preparations were in place to proceed, just as Greg believed he was achieving success. Upon closing my laptop, I experienced an unusual sense of tranquility. For several weeks, I have been discreetly bearing the burden of his betrayal, feigning ignorance to the accumulation of lies surrounding me. However, the balance of power has now changed. Greg was unaware that his world was on the brink of collapse. When the evening of our anniversary dinner arrived, Greg was completely at ease. He entered the house dressed in a tailored suit, carrying a bouquet of roses and a bottle of champagne. "Happy anniversary, my dear," he remarked with a smile, leaning in to kiss my cheek. "Happy anniversary," I responded, maintaining a steady voice and a practiced smile. He did not indicate any awareness of the stiffness in my demeanor. He was preoccupied with boasting. At the restaurant, Greg did not hold back on expenses. He selected the finest wine, the most exquisite dishes, and even coordinated for a pianist to perform our song. It could have been a romantic experience had I not been aware of the truth. While enjoying his wine, Greg received a notification on his phone. His expression brightened upon reading the message, although he promptly attempted to conceal it. "Is everything all right?" I inquired, pretending to be curious. "It is merely a work-related matter," he stated, as he returned the phone to his pocket. "There is no cause for concern," I acknowledged with a nod. Suppressing a smile, I was fully aware of the content of the message. Melanie was anticipating her surprise. Following dinner, Greg proposed that we take a walk. He remarked on the beauty of the night as he gently placed his arm around my shoulders. I complied, allowing him to guide me back to the vehicle. He opened the passenger door for me with the utmost courtesy. Yet I could discern the excitement reflected in his eyes. He was eagerly anticipating the moment when he could excuse himself and present his significant gesture to Melanie. Upon returning to the house, I observed Greg checking his watch repeatedly. His impatience clearly evident. He stated, in a casual tone, that he needed to step out for a short while. He had an urgent work matter to attend to. "Are you referring to our anniversary?" I inquired, tilting my head in a manner that conveyed innocence. He assured me that it would not take long. "This is a matter that requires my attention." I offered a warm smile. "Certainly, please feel free to continue without my interruption." As he took the keys and exited the door, I settled back on the couch, my heart racing. I can envision the scene developing already. Greg arrived at Melanie's residence, presented her with the keys, and enjoyed her admiration until the repossession team intervened. I did not have to wait for an extended period. 1 hour later, I received a text message from Detective Ruiz. "The repossession process has been successfully completed. All aspects proceeded according to the established plan." I gazed at the screen, my hands slightly trembling, as a sense of relief and satisfaction enveloped me. Greg was unaware at that moment, but his carefully constructed facade had just collapsed. This time, I was not the individual responsible for addressing the aftermath. Upon Greg's return later that evening, his complexion appeared flushed, and he lacked his customary confidence. He closed the front door with considerable force, and his keys made a noticeable sound as he placed them on the counter. "Did you experience a challenging night?" I inquired, looking up from the book I was ostensibly reading. He cast me a glance. Yet his words were deliberate. "There were some unforeseen complications," he stated, adjusting the knot of his tie. "Is there anything I can assist you with?" I inquired, my tone laced with insincere concern. "No," he responded sharply, but then quickly moderated his tone. "It is acceptable. There is no need for concern." I suppressed a smile and resumed my reading, allowing the silence to linger between us. Observing Greg's discomfort was quite gratifying, however. My intentions were not yet fulfilled. As he entered the bedroom, expressing a need to resolve certain matters. I received an additional message from Detective Ruiz. Your spouse has submitted a report to the dealership. The person claimed that the removal of the vehicle was an error. We will provide you with updates as they become available. I found myself quietly amused, envisioning Greg's embarrassment as he attempted to explain the repossession while concealing the fraudulent activities involved. The following morning, I awoke to the sound of Greg pacing in the kitchen. He was deep in a phone conversation, his voice measured and strained. He expressed a strong determination, stating that he would do whatever is necessary. Please address the issue promptly. She is extremely upset, and I am unable to calm her down. He halted suddenly upon realizing my presence in the doorway. Good morning, I stated, as I poured myself a cup of coffee. He compelled a smile. Good morning. I am currently attending to some work-related matters. That sounds quite stressful, I remarked, taking a sip of my coffee. Is there anything I should be aware of? He responded promptly, his tone succinct. There is no cause for concern. Throughout the remainder of the day, Greg exhibited an unusual level of quietness. He dedicated several hours to his laptop, expressing his frustration through quiet mutterings and, at times, forcefully closing the lid. It was evident that he was attempting to rectify the situation, however. There was little he could do to change the outcome. The fraud report initiated a comprehensive investigation, and the dealership was not prepared to return the vehicle without obtaining satisfactory explanations. By the evening, Greg's patience had diminished significantly. Have you ever experienced the sensation that the universe is conspiring against you? He inquired abruptly, his tone laced with bitterness. At times, I responded, maintaining a neutral expression. However, I believe that the universe has a method of achieving balance. Do you not agree? He did not respond, however. The gaze he directed towards me remained for an extended period, suggesting that he may have suspected I possessed more knowledge than I was willing to reveal. Greg's composure became increasingly fragile over time. Greg frequently engaged in phone conversations, often in disagreement with the individual on the other end, exhibiting a short temper and appearing distracted. I did not exert pressure on him. Instead, I observed and remained patient, quietly appreciating the disintegration of his meticulously crafted facade. One evening, I listened in on a notably intense phone conversation. Greg was pacing in the living room, his voice subdued yet filled with anger. I assured you that I would address the issue, he stated with a sharp tone. I kindly request a bit more time, as the circumstances are beyond my control. Such occurrences are not uncommon. I could infer the identity of the individual he was conversing with. Melanie. I leaned against the kitchen counter, ostensibly scrolling through my phone. But my full focus was on his words. Greg remarked, attempting to reassure the individual on the other end of the conversation that the situation was being exaggerated. This situation does not require excessive attention. I will address the matter accordingly. The call concluded unexpectedly, prompting Greg to toss his phone onto the couch while expressing his frustration with a series of expletives. Is everything in order? I inquired, entering the living room with a pretense of innocence. He glanced upward, taken aback, and then managed to produce a constrained smile. Yes, it pertains to work-related matters. It must be challenging, I remarked, taking a seat opposite him. It appears that you have been experiencing a significant amount of stress recently. Is there anything I can assist you with? He clenched his jaw, yet he shook his head in response. No, I have it managed effectively. That evening, I received an additional update from Detective Ruiz. The investigation is progressing. The dealership has confirmed the fraud report. The activities of your husband are currently undergoing a review process. I examined the message, feeling a combination of relief and anticipation within me. The situation was becoming increasingly precarious, and Greg remained unaware of the impending developments. The following morning, Greg's mood reached a new low. Greg sat at the kitchen table, his head in his hands, barely interacting with his coffee. He expressed his confusion regarding the behavior of individuals in contemporary society. His voice carried a hint of bitterness. Individuals are primarily focused on their own interests. I nearly choked on my coffee but was able to suppress a laugh. Is that so? Could you please provide details regarding the situation? He gestured dismissively with his hand. There have been a few setbacks. There is no need for concern. Certainly, I responded pleasantly, concealing my amusement behind the edge of my mug. By the end of the week, Greg was clearly experiencing significant stress. His previously confident demeanor had vanished, leaving a man who appeared to be struggling for solutions. As he occupied the living room that evening, diligently typing on his laptop, I positioned myself against the doorway. As I mentioned to Greg, it is often the case that individuals receive outcomes that are commensurate with their actions. He paused momentarily, his fingers suspended above the keyboard, before he turned to face me. What is the intended meaning of that statement? I remained composed, my expression neutral. This is a point for consideration. The critical moment occurred on a Saturday evening. Greg exhibited heightened irritability throughout the day, responding sharply to various situations and individuals. Upon receiving a call from Melanie, his meticulously crafted facade completely disintegrated. I was in the kitchen when his phone received a notification. He looked at the screen, expressed his frustration quietly, and stepped outside to take the call. Intrigued, I discreetly followed, remaining just out of view near the open window. Greg exclaimed in a frantic tone. You do not understand. The responsibility does not rest with me. The dealership is alleging fraud, however. I did not engage in any such activity. He paused, evidently interrupted by an intense outburst on the other end. He stated, with a cracking voice, that he would resolve the issue. Do you believe that I have a greater appreciation for this than you do? Please allow me a bit more time. Melanie, although her voice was subdued, her anger was clearly evident. Upon concluding the call, Greg re-entered the premises with force, closing the door with sufficient intensity to cause the windows to tremble. Is everything all right? I inquired innocently, looking up from my laptop as he hurried by. He replied sharply before exiting the bedroom. Shortly thereafter, I heard the distinct noise of drawers being forcefully opened and closed. Out of curiosity, I entered the room and observed him searching through his closet with tremendous urgency, discarding clothes and shoes onto the bed. What activities are you currently engaged in? I inquired while leaning against the doorframe. He stated briefly that he was packing. Are you ready for the packing process? I expressed a look of skepticism. Are you planning to go somewhere? Please refrain from beginning. Holly, he stated, his tone strained. I currently do not have the availability to address this matter. I observed with my arms crossed as he filled a duffel bag with various items. Hello, Greg. How are you? Your behavior has been unusual throughout the week. He paused momentarily with his back to me before turning to face me. It is of no significance, he stated, his tone more abrupt than usual. I am currently addressing a work-related emergency. I maintained eye contact, allowing the silence to extend for an unusually prolonged duration. Ultimately, I expressed a smile. I understand your point of view. As Greg departed with his quickly assembled bag, I received a message from Detective Ruiz. The investigation is progressing rapidly. Anticipate further developments in the near future. I remained seated on the couch, gazing at the door through which Greg had just exited, experiencing an unusual blend of satisfaction and anticipation. He believed he was taking action to resolve issues, but the reality was that there was nothing remaining to address. By the time he became aware of the situation, it would be too late. After several weeks, I permitted myself to unwind. We were executing the plan, and the components were aligning effectively. At this point, my next step is to await further developments. One key lesson I have acquired over the years is the importance of patience. On Monday morning, I awoke to a series of missed calls and urgent voicemails from Greg. Holly, please return my call at your earliest convenience. As it is urgent, could you please indicate your current location? I would like to speak with you at your earliest convenience. There have been unfounded allegations of fraud. I would appreciate your assistance in resolving this issue. I removed each item without hesitation, appreciating the quiet sense of accomplishment that came with the realization that the situation had finally shifted in my favor. During our coffee meeting, I sent a text message to Detective Ruiz requesting an update. His response was prompt. Greg attempted to reach out to the dealership this morning, He is experiencing significant anxiety, however. The fraud investigation has advanced to a point where reversing any actions is no longer feasible. I found myself smiling as I envisioned Greg's expression upon realizing there was no escape. At approximately noon, the doorbell sounded. Upon opening the door, I found Greg on the porch, appearing disheveled and in a state of distress. His shirt appeared wrinkled, his tie was misaligned, and his typical confidence was noticeably absent. "We need to discuss this matter," he stated, his tone earnest. I positioned my arms across my chest while leaning against the doorframe. "What would you like to discuss, Greg? The vehicle purchased for your companion? Or the allegations of fraud you are currently confronting?" His eyes widened, and a look of panic crossed his face. "Holly, I would like to provide an explanation. I have decided to discontinue communication with him. I possess comprehensive knowledge on the subject. I am well versed in the topic of fraudulent business trips, extravagant dinners, and vehicles. I am aware of the situation. Despite your belief that it went unnoticed, this has been on my radar for several months." He faltered in his speech while attempting to construct a defense, however. I did not allow him the opportunity to continue. "You utilized our resources to support your falsehoods," I stated, my voice unwavering. "Your actions have resulted in consequences that you are now facing." He approached with caution, his hands elevated in a sign of capitulation. "Please, Holly, I acknowledge the error, but we can rectify this situation. I will reimburse you. I am committed to taking all necessary actions to achieve the desired outcome." I expressed a look of skepticism. "Will you be able to reimburse me? What resources are available? Could it be your unfulfilled commitments or the correspondence from Melanie?" The mention of her name made him flinch, indicating that I had triggered a sensitive nerve. Prior to his response, I took a step back and indicated the stack of papers positioned on the entryway table. "Please proceed by signing these documents," I stated. Greg paused, surveying the documents. "Could you please clarify what this is?" I responded with the divorce papers. "You have already forfeited the vehicle. And shortly, you will lose access to all other assets as well. This is your last opportunity to retain any remaining dignity." He fixed his gaze upon me, his jaw becoming tense. For a brief moment, I anticipated that he might engage in a dispute, however. He ultimately displayed signs of resignation as his shoulders slumped in defeat. "There is no obligation for you to proceed with this," he stated softly. "Indeed, I do," I stated with conviction. "In contrast to your approach, I possess the ability to complete the tasks I undertake." Greg departed without further comment, and as I closed the door after him, I experienced a profound sense of relief. The individual who had significantly impacted my life has finally departed, and for the first time in years, I experienced a sense of liberation. The house was unusually quiet after Greg departed, yet it was not the disconcerting silence I had become accustomed to throughout our marriage. This was the tranquil type. It signified liberation. I sat at the kitchen table, scrutinizing the signed divorce documents. Greg departed with reluctance, his appeals still resonating in my thoughts, however. The burden of his betrayal no longer weighed heavily upon me. After several months, I experienced a sense of control. In the following days, I began the process of reconstructing my life systematically. The initial step involved a meeting with my attorney to finalize the divorce proceedings. Clara, demonstrating her efficiency, was pleased with the seamless progress of the operations, based on the fraud investigation and the financial evidence we have collected. "He possesses limited leverage," Clara stated while reviewing her notes. "You will retain ownership of the house, your assets, and any remaining funds that have not been depleted." "What is the status of the fraud case?" I inquired, maintaining a steady yet inquisitive tone. Clara responded that progress is being made in that regard. Detective Ruiz has confirmed that all elements are properly arranged. We expect Greg to face charges soon. And given the available evidence, it is unlikely that he will avoid incarceration. I acknowledged the news, which provided me with a sense of closure that I had not previously recognized as necessary. As the legal proceedings progressed, I concentrated on reclaiming the space that Greg had attempted to dominate. I reorganized the furniture, replaced the old curtains with selected new ones, and painted the living room a soft shade of blue, which is my preferred color, rather than his. Amanda visited one afternoon to assist, equipped with paint rollers and a bottle of wine. She remarked that this location already has a distinct atmosphere as we engaged in our tasks. It appears that you have reclaimed the energy that he attempted to extract from it. That's the goal, I replied, smiling. I want this house to reflect my identity rather than serve as a reminder of him. I have also begun to reconnect with friends with whom I had lost contact during my marriage. Greg consistently asserted control over our social engagements, determining whom we interacted with and the timing of those interactions. I was now able to make my own decisions. One evening, I organized an intimate dinner gathering with Amanda and several close friends. As we enjoyed a meal that I had prepared, sharing laughter and stories, I recognized the significance of this moment and how much I had missed being in the company of individuals who genuinely care for me. This is not the version of myself that Greg attempted to influence. The investigation into Greg's fraudulent activities has continued to advance. Detective Ruiz provided me with updates every few days, maintaining a professional tone that was subtly infused with satisfaction. The dealership is fully cooperating, he stated during a call. Greg's efforts to conceal his actions ultimately exacerbated the situation. We will eventually accomplish this goal. I expressed my gratitude to him, experiencing a combination of relief and validation. Greg had invested years in attempting to manipulate my actions, however. Ultimately, he only succeeded in outsmarting himself. Upon concluding the phone call, I found myself in the center of my newly painted living room, absorbing the surroundings. The residence was tranquil, yet it no longer conveyed a sense of emptiness. It provided a sense of familiarity and comfort. The weeks following Greg's departure provided a sense of tranquility that I had not experienced in many years. The residence, previously characterized by tension and deceit, now exuded an atmosphere of tranquility and safety. One morning, while seated on the back porch enjoying a cup of coffee, I opened my notebook and began outlining my plans for the future. For an extended period, my life was centered on ensuring Greg's satisfaction, managing his desires, and mitigating the consequences of his errors. At this moment, I am able to concentrate fully on my personal development. I wrote activities I have always aspired to undertake at the top of the page. The list expanded rapidly. Update the interior design of the residence. Embark on a journey to Greece. Establish my own business. Allocate additional time for engagement with friends and family. Greg's selfishness had overshadowed my identity for an extended period, and each item represented a significant step toward reclaiming it. I began by addressing the initial item on the list. With Amanda's assistance, I successfully transformed the house to reflect my personal style. The house is now welcoming, engaging, and distinctly personal. The walls were painted in vibrant colors. The furniture previously chosen by Greg was replaced, and his former home office was converted into an art studio. Amanda remarked that this painting seemed to embody your essence as we hung it on the living room wall. The residence now reflects the character of its occupant. I smiled, experiencing a sense of pride. The project is currently in development, but it is progressing well. The subsequent step involved the reconstruction of my professional career. Throughout my marriage, Greg dissuaded me from pursuing my professional aspirations, asserting that his ambitions took precedence. I was determined to make up for the lost time. I contacted former colleagues and mentors to discuss my circumstances and convey my desire to re-enter the workforce. Their support was substantial, and within a few weeks, I had multiple promising opportunities arranged. One evening, I received a call from a former supervisor who extended an offer for a consulting position on a project that aligns with my professional interests. "We would be pleased to welcome you back," she stated warmly. I expressed my gratitude, experiencing a sense of validation that I had not previously recognized as necessary. I am prepared. As I adapted to my new routine, I observed subtle yet significant changes within myself. I exhibited increased confidence, decisiveness, and a greater willingness to embrace risks. The apprehension and self-doubt that Greg had instilled in me were diminishing. It was being replaced by a calm resilience that I was previously unaware I possessed. One evening, while seated on the couch with a glass of wine, I surveyed the surroundings of the house and felt a sense of contentment. This is my current reality, characterized by its complexity, imperfections, and my complete ownership. Several weeks later, I received a call from Detective Ruiz. The fraud investigation has been officially concluded. He stated, Greg has been officially charged, and the case is scheduled to proceed to court in the coming months. The news impacted me more profoundly than anticipated, not due to sympathy for Greg, but because it represented the definitive disintegration of the life we had once shared. I expressed my sincere gratitude to Ruiz for all that he has done. Without his guidance, I was uncertain if I would have possessed the strength to complete this endeavor. Justice requires time, he stated succinctly. However, it is worthwhile. That evening, I served myself a glass of wine and took a seat on the back porch. Gazing up at the stars, the closure I had anticipated was finally attainable. Accompanied by a complex array of emotions, I felt a sense of relief, satisfaction, and a hint of melancholy regarding the life I had envisioned for myself. Amanda visited the following day, her characteristic enthusiasm permeating the atmosphere of the house. You appear different, she remarked, presenting me with a bag of takeout. I experience a sense of relief. I replied with a slight smile. Greg's legal proceedings are progressing, and the divorce is nearing finalization. I feel a renewed sense of relief. Amanda smiled. You appear to be radiating positivity. What are the next steps? I indicated the notebook placed on the coffee table. I have been formulating plans. Engage in travel, pursue professional opportunities, and potentially establish my own business. I am finally gaining clarity about my own desires rather than conforming to the expectations of others. Amanda remarked playfully, raising her glass in a toast. We look forward to the next chapter. In the subsequent weeks, I began to complete additional items on my list. I have arranged a solo trip to Greece, a destination I have long aspired to visit but previously lacked the opportunity to explore. The prospect of exploring ancient ruins and strolling along sunlit beaches instilled in me a sense of adventure that I had not experienced in years. Simultaneously, I engaged in my consulting work with enormous enthusiasm, rekindling the passion and drive that had previously been suppressed by Greg. Every step forward felt like a formal declaration. I was no longer characterized by the errors of my past or the betrayals I had experienced. One afternoon, while I was in my newly redecorated living room, I observed the framed photograph on the mantel. The photograph depicted Amanda and me from several years prior, taken well before Greg became a part of my life. Upon reflection, I have come to recognize an important insight. I remained that individual. She is a resilient and competent woman who possesses the ability to be self-sufficient. Greg was unable to take that from me. Regardless of his efforts, I am now prepared to progress without dwelling on the past.